Morning class, this is Friday, April 17th. We're going to do a review of Attila, King of the Huns. As soon as this lesson is over, go over, take your quiz for Friday, April 17th. Attila, King of the Huns. Attila was born 406 AD. His father was Munzuk. The Huns were nomadic people that lived in the Great Plain of modern day Hungary. The Huns, one generation before Attila was born, the Huns migrated over from Central Asia around 370 AD. Him and his brother, Bleda, had to learn the ways of the Hun culture, which was to use a lasso and a sword and a bow, and to also be a skilled horseman. So any boy that grew up in the Hun culture learned these different weapons and tools: lasso, sword, bow, very skilled on the horse. And Bleda and Attila were no different, even though they were born in a royal family. So here's a picture of the Great Hungarian Plain, and there is a depiction of the Huns. Here's another one. They're very, very feared, which we've talked about already, but very, very feared, and they were depicted as being savages and very ruthless in their attacks. They loved to fight from the horse. They did not like getting off their horse, so much so that even like other armies they would face had very modern type boots, full boots that they would wear because they would march so much. But the Huns wore almost like socks. They were just leather wrapped around their, or leather or cloth just wrapped around their feet because they did not like wearing the boots, because they didn't even like to get off their horse at all. They stayed on their horse. They had short, fast horses. They would shoot bow and arrow from the horse. They'd also use these short swords or lassos to fight. That was their fighting style: coming quickly, shooting arrows, and killing people from horseback. Over time, as they migrated into the Great Hungarian Plain, they were more nomadic, but they began to set up more buildings, especially under Attila's reign, and they set up, they became more centralized and living in buildings and structures and things like that. Rise to power. So Attila and his brother became joint leaders in 434 after their uncle, King Rua, died. So their uncle dies, they rise and became joint leaders. Attila was 28 years old, Bleda was 44 years old. This is King Rua, this is Bleda, and this is Attila. So historians basically agree that there's two main theories on what happened, why the brothers took over. Number one was that Attila and Bleda killed their cousins so that they could become king. Of course, that one's a more interesting story, especially with Attila's reputation. But another theory, and probably more likely theory, is that King Rua just didn't have any sons, and so Attila and Bleda were groomed from a young age to become the king. So they were prepared for the throne. The Huns were very powerful people before Attila and Bleda took over. Some more artist depictions. They loved to burn villages. Huns would come through a city, burn the village. Okay, so peace with the Romans, Roman numeral 3. So now Attila and Bleda are in charge. The nomadic, semi-nomadic Hun people have become a little bit more centralized, living, creating small cities within the Great Plain, having a leadership more like the surrounding nations. So the Huns had fought against the Eastern Roman Empire for hundreds of years, but in 439 AD, Attila and Bleda together brokered the Treaty of Margus with Rome. This treaty meant the Romans would pay off the Huns for peace. This is a picture of a Roman soldier fighting off a wave of arrows. But for this treaty, the Romans used to pay the Huns for protection against other enemies. So before 439 AD, the Huns were paid off by the Romans to protect them, and then they just started attacking the Romans themselves, and they had to sign this treaty, 439 AD, to protect. The Romans had to pay this to protect the Roman Empire from the Huns. So Attila and Bleda signed this 439 AD. So very crucial time, because as soon as they signed this Treaty of Margus, the Romans removed their troops from the Eastern Front. So they did not have that threat anymore, or so they thought, of Attila and the Huns. They removed their troops from the Eastern Front, and they sent most of those troops to fight the Vandals in Sicily and North Africa. So far on the west side of their empire. They pulled their troops out to fight against the Vandals. Now the Vandals were a Germanic tribe that fought against the Romans for years to the south and to the west. So Vandals originated in Germany. They ended up settling in North Africa and lived there for about 100 years. They were settled in North Africa, and they would constantly attack the underside of Rome, pirating islands such as Corsica, Sicily, Crete, attacking the mainland of Italy, what's modern day Italy, and just wreaking a lot of havoc. And even in 455 AD, they got all the way to Rome. They completely destroyed the city of Rome. The word vandalism we use today comes from this group of people. So after they sacked Rome in 455 AD, this is pretty much their last hurrah, and they kind of drift off. They kind of leave history. So back on the eastern front, the Attila and his Huns turned their attention east and began to war against the Sassanid Empire. So this is later. This is not at the time when Attila ruled, but this is a couple hundred years later. But this is the largest that the Sassanid Empire ever got. So this big country in the middle is modern-day Iran, and this green area is where the Sassanid Empire was in their largest. So during the time of Attila, it was probably smaller, more centralized into where Iran is. But Sassanid Empire ruled in modern-day Iran. It was the last pre-Islamic Persian empire, and so the Huns came down, fought them, and then they were driven back to the Hungarian plain. So this was the first time that they were driven back by anybody, the first of two times where Attila lost a battle or did not win a battle. So he was driven back to the Great Hungarian Plain. This is another depiction of the Sassanid Empire. They used camels to fight. This is actually them fighting against the Roman Empire, but they were a powerful Persian empire in modern-day Iran. Okay, so war with the Romans. So now that Attila had been turned away from the Sassanid Empire, he goes back to the Great Hungarian Plain, and he finds out that all the Roman soldiers had left. They had left to go fight the Vandals. So when Attila and Bleda saw that the Romans had left, they attacked the Romans. So the reason they justified breaking the treaty was that the Romans broke their side of the agreement by not releasing all the prisoners that they agreed upon. They also claimed that a Roman bishop made a secret trip into Hun territory and desecrated Hun graves. Most historians believe that these claims are false and that Attila made these up so he could attack the Romans that didn't have any, there was no protection for any of their cities. So the Huns ransacked many cities across the Roman countryside. Just a couple depictions of that. This is how they would fight: short horses, shooting bows and arrows, using their swords. So the Huns this time reached within 20 miles of the capital of Constantinople. The Emperor of Rome had to pay Attila to leave. So they attack the vulnerable Romans. They get within 20 miles of Constantinople. The Emperor has to pay Attila to leave. They go back to the Great Hungarian Plain. After they get back to the Great Hungarian Plain, Bleda, the older brother of Attila, disappears from the record. So one theory is that he died in the battle fighting this conquest into Rome. Another theory, and the more popular theory, is that Attila killed him to take sole possession of the throne. So historians are split between these two main theories, but he does disappear from the record. He is dead. So years later, after Bleda's death, Attila attacks a weak Rome again, destroying as many as 70 villages. This is Constantinople. Roman numeral 5, final conquest into Europe. An proposal. So this very interesting story. This lady named Honoria was trying to escape from an arranged marriage, so she takes her wedding ring and puts it in her engagement ring and puts it in the letter, sends it to Attila, asking for help. Attila gets the message and sends back word demanding half of the Western Empire as dowry. So Honoria's brother, Valentinian, who was very powerful in the Roman Empire, sent back word to Attila saying, "You are not getting half the Roman Empire, and there is no proposal, and you are mistaken." Attila, being Attila, answered back that he was coming to get his bride, and he begins to assemble his army to attack. So you kind of get the picture that Attila, throughout his entire life, is just constantly looking for reasons to attack different people. But he definitely finds another one here. This is Honoria, and that is Valentinian. So 451 AD, he mobilizes his army of anywhere between 200,000 and 500,000 men, and begins his attack on the Roman Empire. So if you see here in 442, this is where he came down and got within 20 miles of Constantinople and then turns away. Bleda dies here, and then a few years, 5 years later, he comes down and attacks the Roman Empire again, killing as many, or destroying as many as 70 villages, and then goes back up. And then he goes into Europe here, and then the next one we'll learn about is the attack on modern day Italy. The only one that's not shown here is when he goes to fight the Sassanid Empire over here. So 451, he mobilizes between 200,000 and 500,000 men. He goes into Europe, goes into Gaul, which is modern day France. Hun's reputation preceded them and caused a mass exodus of people fleeing for their lives, of course. By this time, Attila is very infamous for being very ruthless, destroying villages, and he was known as Phalasium Dei, which means scourge of God. So all throughout Gaul, people, and through this area of Europe, people began to flee, trying to get out of the way of Attila and the Huns. These are some depictions of how Attila is seen at the time. So he was finally met in battle by the combined forces of the Romans under Flavius Aetius. So the Romans had to gather troops from all the different territories. They had to gather them together to try to stop the invading Huns. Flavius Aetius, this guy, was in charge of the Roman Empire. Then we get to the Battle of the Chalons in this massive field, Catalian Fields, or the Battle of the Chalons. Huns, of course, are on their horseback shooting their arrows. Romans, soldiers here with their shields under Flavius Aetius. One of the bloodiest battles in European history. Close to, or if not over, 1 million soldiers fighting in this battle. He was stopped from going any farther. So this is the second time where Attila has not won a battle. The first time was against the Sassanid Empire. He was turned away. And now the first and only time in Europe against the Romans that he actually did not win a battle. He actually lost this battle. First and only time that Attila lost or did not win a battle in Europe against the Romans. So he stopped from going any further. So 452, we saw that other little red line on that map when he goes down to the Po River. This is the Po River here. He goes down to modern day Italy, attacked different cities in Italy, and he stopped at the Po River. Historians aren't 100% sure why he stopped at the Po River. Some believe that he was out of supplies. Some believe that the Pope came out and gave him a gift. Some believe the Emperor came out and gave him a gift so he would leave. Some believe that his men, there was disease or they were tired, different things going on with his own men. But for whatever reason, he stopped at the Po River. Historians will say the same thing about when he stopped before getting to Constantinople, that he'd get really close and then he would just turn away. Then he died 453, 1 year later. He died from alcohol poisoning. Very few people believe that he was actually poisoned, but most people believe that he drank himself to death. After his death, his 4 sons fought over control of the kingdom. They never got control, and 16 years after he died, his empire was completely gone. So that's the story of Attila, king of the Huns.